I was smiling and laughing looking at MMA memes on my phone the other day, and then I saw a headline on Instagram that said that there's no male champions in the UFC right now. It was unbelievable how fast the smile on my face faded whenever the realization set in, and whenever I looked at the ranking and came to the determination that we're likely not going to get an American champion for some time until new contenders come up. So I think it'd be a good idea to talk about it because it's really not looking good, you guys. All my American fans, I inverted our flag because this is a national tragedy that we've encountered. No male UFC champion. And this is the first time that it's been this way since the year 2004. A lot of veteran fans, they grew up on Chuck Liddell, John Jones as an OG, and also Daniel Cormier. We had Max Holloway holding belts at featherweight for a large portion of the 2010s as well. We've had American champions. At least one since I've started caring about all of this. Think recently, we've lost Sean Strickland, Sean O'Malley, Bilal Muhammad, and John Jones as champions over the span of months, and those were our Americans. They're gone now. They've been weeded out. They're in mid top 10 rankings, and above them are people that they probably don't beat from countries that aren't America. Americans have unsuccessfully tried to bring belts home over the last few years. And as an American, as I'm going back through the events like Gaethje versus Oliveira, or Chandler versus Oliveira, Pereira versus any American that he fought, we've watered the gardens of other MMA markets more than our own with our fandom and attention that we give to certain fighters and fight. And as a result of this, America has quietly become a gatekeeper country. We're really only producing dudes who get to top 5 max and just chill there because they're not good enough to get to the belts. And it's a shame because we have talented fighters. America produces great athletes. Just for some reason, they're not very dominant in MMA. So let's look at a few unsuccessful title challengers from the United States of America. Per the rankings, these Americans have the best shots of becoming champions in their division. But if you look at each of them, the ones who haven't retired or are about to retire, they do not touch gold. There's no way they do. But in the way of the rankings, sure, there's unranked people that are coming up with momentum behind them, but these are the dudes who are sitting in the top 10 positions of their division. And an example of dudes like Corey Sandhagen, who haven't fought their champions like Merab, they fought all of the contenders who went to Merab, and they got beat by them. And they've gatekept the number 1 contendership for years. And it seems like this is the highest aspiration of any American on the roster, is that you just get to this position where you win some fights and you lose some fights, but no matter what, you're in the top 5. As I spoke about a little bit before, Americans don't even root for fighters from their own countries anymore. It's not their fault. We're going to go with whoever's the most entertaining, and usually that isn't our American friends. And yeah, we have instances like Khalil Roundtree or Dustin Poirier. Dustin Poirier is more of a fan favorite than Khalil Roundtree, but Khalil Roundtree is getting to become very liked by the community. We've accepted that these guys will likely never become champions because they had their opportunities and they just don't do it. So if you are picking them, it's just because you're charmed by their personalities or you think that their gimmick is cool. And like in the instance of Sean O'Malley or Sean Strickland, if you were to actually break down the matchups, I picked Sean O'Malley going out on a limb, but all throughout that prediction and the week of breaking down that fight, I was like, yeah, there's a very strong chance that the same thing happens. It ended up being worse. In the first go against Merab and against Dricus du Plessis for both of the Seans, I gave each of them a fair shake. I made my support for Sean Strickland in the first Dricus du Plessis fight more so about the fact that he was American than anything else. But in the Sean O'Malley fight against Merab, I just like Sean O'Malley and I enjoyed the knockouts that he was once able to produce. And the reason why I did favor a fighter like Sean O'Malley is because his style is so hard to encounter out of American MMA. Most of the time we're getting the runoff of collegiate wrestlers or ex-NFL players, and they don't even see the rankings because if their doubles or single legs don't work, they rely on this clubbing overhand, and if that fails, they just lose the fight. And God forbid they get paired up with a mountain grappler or any guy from a Stan country. It's over for them. It doesn't matter how far they got into collegiate style wrestling, it seems nowadays. All the people like Corey Sandhagen or Sean O'Malley or even Dustin Poirier on his resurgence before he fought Islam, these were guys who we thought maybe were potentially good enough to win titles and the opportunities that they got to win them, but they proved to us that they don't and how much they don't. It makes it hard to imagine that ex-champions like both of the Seans would ever be able to make it back to a position where they could contend for a title, just because we saw how badly they do lose the fights with the champions of their divisions. They've been relegated to gatekeepers, and they didn't choose this. The All-American Divisional Champ, D1 college wrestler, has been runner-up to most people with names that end in Av, Ev, or Era for years and years and years now. And we've been developing what is the strongest grappling approach. D1 style collegiate wrestling, it may not be able to hang in there. Another large issue is that as American contenders get older and retire, they're not being replaced by other Americans. They're just being replaced by Ievs or Medovs or Sharipovs or Silvas. Brazil and Russia MMA has been smoking on America's pack, and smaller countries as well, with fractions of the populations of these countries like Kazakhstan and also Georgia. They're taking number twos on America in MMA, and it's crazy to watch because they have like 25 million people. Australia, 25 million people, 2 UFC champions. And how did we allow this to happen? We need to start funneling our wrestlers into MMA or from other disciplines, or start developing our own boxing here in America and not taking from Mexico. I don't know what we need to do, man. But there's a problem for the fact that this is the largest market in MMA and we do not have champions. No champions, but you better believe that we have failed hype trains. Look at this glorious lineup of failed American hype trains. And it's not over until it's over, but as of right now, our prospects from America at least are not projected to do anything. Americans either cling to boxing or wrestling that they developed in the US, and it always seems to be a step behind other countries and whatever they were able to develop. And if a guy wants to get really good at striking or grappling, even at this point, he has to go somewhere else in order to learn these skills. But that's not even entirely true, because it's not like we don't have premier MMA gyms in America. Some of the best training facilities are here, and we're cultivating foreign talent at these gyms instead of American ones. And I'm not sure if it's that or if it's just those are the people expressing interest in these gyms. But we have Extreme Couture, Killcliff MMA, American Top Team, Jackson Wink Academy, MMA Lab, an unquantifiable amount of places to train and learn MMA in America. And yet we're using these places to platform Kazakhstan and Irish fighters in place of Americans that could be getting these placements to train at these facilities to become champions. I just don't know why they're not doing it. Because again, it's not like we don't have great athletics in America. They're just playing basketball, football, or baseball instead of fighting because there's not enough money in it for them to choose this career path over other ones. The largest market and the home market for the UFC is producing the least amount of championship level fighters at this current moment. And going back to what I said before about the gyms that host foreign fighters, others may live in America to train, but they do not wave the American flag, so they must be recognized by the nationality that they claim publicly. So even though they train in America, these are not American fighters. So let's discuss now fighters from the states who may become champions still. And this will set the timeline from right now in the year 2025 to 2026 and onward. The first guy is Malcolm Wellmaker. He's not ranked and he's from Augusta, Georgia. He's powerful enough to KO this entire division, but I'd say he needs to demonstrate more of his cardio and grappling before he can be moved towards the title on a fast track. In order to win the belt too, he has to beat Merab, which is, you're going to need more than a puncher's chance in order to do that. He's a lot more technical than a guy who does have a puncher's chance. And even at bantamweight, he's producing somewhat Topuria level KOs. These are like heavyweight knockouts. I still think he's too young. He might be 30, 31 years old, but as far as the sport goes, he still seems a bit fresh. They haven't tested him to the point where I'm comfortable with the idea of him fighting Merab. I think that he gets whooped if they ran it right now. I even think granting him a matchup with a fighter like Song Yadong or Chito Vera could be risky right now. But in time, he could surprise all of us like Joshua Van has at 125. He would need to do some harder work just because this division is deeper and there's better contenders at bantamweight than there is at flyweight per capita. But we'd all love to see this guy as champion. You and me, we'd love to see Malcolm Wellmaker hold the belt at 135 pounds. The next fighter, Mario Bautista at number 8. I know how we might still feel about this guy, but for whatever it's worth, he's American. He trains out of Glendale, Arizona MMA Lab. This is Benson Henderson's gym. This is one of the only people I see putting on a good performance against Merab and not getting thoroughly dominated the whole time. I think he's scrappy enough on the floor to be able to tussle with Merab there, because that's what he would need to be able to do. He doesn't have the KO threat to be able to knock Merab out, but it would be a test of cardio and pacing. And one person could very well wear the other guy out by making him work more. And that would be the game that they would play. So I think it would be a fun fight to watch at least. Mario Bautista, he beat Jose Aldo in the name of America, and we still treat him like he's from the Black Lagoon for this reason. He gets fried by Merab. I'm thinking that he probably gets whooped in that fight, since Merab looks like the greatest striker and also submits people like Royce Gracie, you know? I don't know what it is, you guys. I just have this feeling still that Merab is gonna get chinned. And it's hating, bro. At this point, it's literally just hating. Because I thought it was going to happen in the O'Malley rematch, that he'd come out locked in, and that he'd produce this knockout, and that he'd find it, and it would be easy once he found it. But that opportunity doesn't come to anyone who fights Merab. But it just seems like it's that simple. You just knock him out whenever you can, but you never can. I personally won't hold out for this guy to just take some fluke loss, ducking into an uppercut or something anymore. I think he's too good for that. Mario Bautista gets slimed out wherever they fight. In this division, I would have selected Joaquin Buckley as well, but I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think that he could be a guy who wins the belt in this division, even though he just lost to Usman? Usman on butterbread knees, who's still a great wrestler, but we'll see how his fight with Bilal Muhammad goes to see how that loss ages. But I think that was Buckley's time to beat Usman. He needed to knock him out. It was important that he did do it, and he didn't. That loss, I know that we're all talking about, yeah, Buckley's going to be back, and I believe it to a certain level, but losing to Usman like that and just getting wrestling masterclass, it set Buckley back a lot. And it displayed that there's a clear path to victory against him if you do reach a certain threshold of wrestling and you can take the fight to the ground. And it makes it to the point where I'm like, I'm not even sure if Joaquin Buckley does beat a Sean Brady. With as committed as we've seen that Sean Brady would stay to a takedown in the Gilbert Burns fight and on the Leon Edwards fight. Now, he'd not force the opportunity, but perfectly create the opportunities to get in on hips and to take the fight to the floor. I think this might be the guy. He just needs to shore up his striking, and it doesn't seem like he's moved leaps and bounds at making progress in this area. But hell if he can't grapple. He lives in Pennsylvania, and he trains out of Simplify MMA. He has a shot at winning gold if it's a fresh stylistic matchup that isn't Bilal Muhammad. The only thing that I worry about him in a fight with JDM is that he's going to get executed by JDM on the feet before he gets to wrestle in that fight. And he would get punished for continuing to try to keep wrestling after the first takedown got stuffed if it did. Sean Brady is not a fun style to watch at all. It's no frills grappling. He can display unique movements on the ground and scrambles and in submission attempts, but he's nowhere near the best striker in the division. He's not even top 5. He's not even top 10. Maybe not even top 15, all things considered, if we're looking at it from the perspective of pure kickboxing. I think that Ian Gary does a better job against Sean Brady and has a better chance of beating him than Joaquin Buckley does. And that's probably the best contender that any country has the rights to, Ian Gary out of Ireland right now. Going back to Buckley's loss to Usman, I think that Usman is just the better version of Sean Brady's style with less of a submission threat. But from the perspective of the striking and the wrestling, Usman plays the game very similar to Sean Brady, but just does it better than he does. But Sean Brady does get points for vanquishing Leon Edwards. So he'll likely need one more fight before he can challenge for a belt, but if it's a good performance, then I may be all in on the Sean Brady hype train, you guys, because we need an American champion in one of these weight classes. A breakout performance from, I think it was at UFC 317, it was within like the last 3 weeks. Jose Delgado, he's not ranked. He trains in Phoenix, Arizona out of MMA Lab. He has this strange ability to score really wicked finishes. I didn't foresee the fight with Hyder Emil going the way that it did, and he knocked him out cold. Jose Delgado, he's a freestyle striker, and most Americans who come from grappling backgrounds are, but they're most effective whenever they use Muay Thai. Jamal Hill opts to use a more boxing-heavy approach as a freestyle striker. It only really works mostly for guys like Bobby Green or Michael Johnson, who box like boxers even though they are freestyle fighters still. This is really just a vanilla fighter. Jose Delgado, no accents or gimmicks associated with Delgado or any American in the UFC in general, for that matter of fact, now that I'm thinking about this. This win over Hyder Emil does display promise for his future in the promotion, but he probably loses to Volk. But it's weird, it's just that quick twitch. He could shoot one of these knees, maybe an elbow. This guy is weird. I'm going to be watching him really closely and what he does after his finish over Hyder Emil. I think he can go far, and there's a good chance that this guy is a special fighter. So even though we don't know him for much right now, he may become a mainstay of this division in time. So let's let things develop a little bit. The last fighter I'm going to discuss is going to be Steve Garcia. He will be fighting this weekend. He trains out of Albuquerque, New Mexico at Jackson Wink MMA Academy. Shout out for what Mexican Americans do to bolster America's image on the world stage whenever it comes to fighting. They could very well, even if you are a Central American or a South American, you live in America, and you were born here and you have citizenship and you choose to wave our flag instead of going with wherever your parents are from. I'm proud of the fact that we share the same borders. Because on a world stage, if I was competing against other countries, I'd be proud to represent the American flag as well. So, W patriotism. I think that Steve is a mean bastard, and I can't speak to how well he'll do against Volkanovski, but I think he's going to paper shred Calvin Kattar this weekend, and I could pretty safely assert that. It's difficult to tell you how things will go for him in general just because he lacks clean wins. A gripe that you could have with Steve Garcia's resume is that he often relies on having more cardio than his opponents to win fights. That he drags them out to be really messy and violent, and he forces his opponent to concave, and he's still fresh for some reason. He has inhuman cardio, Steve Garcia. He also has this brawling style that makes it seem like he wouldn't be able to last as long as he does in fights. Americans with brawling styles promise US fans fun fights and not belts. We have our Gaethjes and our Michael Chandlers, and we know what we get every single time that we turn on the UFC event and they're fighting on the main card. But you're not a UFC ball knower if you're convinced that those guys have any run at actually getting to a title in 2025. So I'll root for Steve Garcia against most of the top 5. Volk is just a really tricky fight for everyone. Calvin Kattar is going to be a good placement test for all of us to see where his skill set measures up to the rest of this division and the champion. Press F to pay respects, really. It's actually kind of sad to think about how America is really taking a backseat to everything that's going on in the UFC. And that in a way, John Jones was kind of the last thing that was linking the USA to dominance in this sport. For the meantime, at least. So please do like, comment, and subscribe. I'm going to catch you fellas in the next one. Please have a wonderful day.